Hello and welcome to this rather brief introduction to the linguistics theory course for the MA. In this, as I said, rather brief lecture, I'm going to run through the course and some of the details that you'll need to know in order to participate. First, we'll start with the basics of the course. If you've come from the email that I sent round to this lecture, then you'll need to access the course website, which you can find at this address. If you've come from the course website, then obviously this will be superfluous information for you. You won't need to know where the address is because you'll already be there. On that website, from the home page, you'll be able to access the schedule. And this is the schedule as we've organised it for this particular semester. As you can see, there are in fact 11 lectures, or 11 subjects, shall we say, including the present one, but that means that there are 10 lectures for the course that actually have content. These are the lecturers there who are giving it. There are 9 lecturers all in the department, and each one will be giving at least one subject. One person will actually give 2. Now, the course then is organised in a logical order, and we advise you to take the course in the order given on the schedule. And it's organised into 3 sections. The first section deals with preliminaries, basic background to the subject, including history of linguistics and topics of data analysis. The next section, which consists of 3 lectures, is more to do with phonology and morphology. And the final 3 topics are all to do with syntax. Okay, so they're organized into these subtopics, and so we therefore advise you to take the course in this particular order, although it will be available once it's all up for you to access at any time in any order you actually want to. Now, the course material for the course you'll be able to find on the schedule itself. So if you go to the schedule page on the website, next to each of the lectures, you can find the course material which is downloadable from that page. Now, there are various sorts of materials that we're making available. Different people will give different materials. There are actual lectures which are recorded videos that you can access by clicking the link on the schedule. There are slides which you can download. The slides may or may not accompany actual lectures, but the slides are the slides which have been used for the lectures if they were given in class. These contain obviously all the material of that particular lecture. Then there are some notes. The notes are basically detailed write-ups of the content of the subject. These may go beyond what would have actually been part of the lecture, have more information and more details in them. You can look at these as more like chapters of a course book, if you like. And then finally, there are some recommended readings in literature that some people have provided that you can then go beyond the material provided on the website and find some other readings to back up. what we've covered in the subjects. Okay, so as I said, the way to proceed is go to the schedule page of the website, and then next to each of the lectures you'll find several links which you can click and download the material. And as I said, it's all available all at once we've completed the thing, which I'm hoping will be very soon. It's all available, but we advise you to stick to the order on the schedule. And the other thing to do is we very much recommend you to use the whole semester to access the material. Take your time to go through it and read it properly, and to watch the lectures, etc., etc. And don't be tempted to put it all off until right before the exam and then try to binge read or watch the material all at once. It's not going to work. There's too much material, and it's the kind of material that needs to be sort of taken in and digested. It's not going to be possible for you to do it in a couple of days just before the exam. So our advice is to spread it out over the semester. You've got the whole semester to access the material, and that way I think you'll get the most out of it. Finally, we need to talk about the exam itself. The exam will be a matter of 10 questions, one per subject on the schedule, and the exam itself will also be organised into those 3 sections that the lectures themselves are organised in. There'll be a preliminary section consisting of 4 questions, the phonology and morphology section consisting of 3 questions, and a syntax section with 3 questions in. Now, the questions are of the essay type. That is, they expect an answer written in a written essay form, not a multiple choice type exam. It's not a test as such. So each question will have to be answered by an essay. Now, in the exam, you have to answer 1 question from each section. So you don't have to answer all 10 questions, but you must select 1 from each section. Therefore, you will write a total of 3 answers. If you don't follow those guidelines and you choose to write 2 of the questions from 1 section, then I'm afraid the second essay that you write is just simply going to be ignored, and you'll get a 0 for the section that you didn't write an answer for. Okay, so it's important that you select 1 question from each section, and that way you'll be able to get the maximum amount of marks available. Now, the exam itself will take 2 hours. Okay, so you have 2 hours to write 3 questions. That means you've got 40 minutes per answer, which is not an awful lot of time to write answers. Now, the expectations that we have of these essays is going to be proportionate to the amount of time you've got. Okay, so we don't expect you to write answers of the same quality or quantity even as we might expect you to write for a home assignment, where you may have 1 or 2 weeks to research and write the thing up. Obviously, if you've only got 40 minutes, we're not expecting you to write perfect answers. Essentially, an essay of an exam has to be concise and to the point. It doesn't have to be very long as it's got all the relevant material in it. And we'll talk about what the relevant material is in a short while. And don't make it elaborate. Don't elaborate your essay with lengthy introductions and summaries which just simply repeat what you've already said. Cut all that kind of stuff out and keep it basic. It should, as I say, contain all and only the relevant material. Okay, so the exam itself is going to be put up on the Canvas course at the scheduled time. What that means is once the exams have been published as to when they are going to take place, you will have to register for one of the exams. There are going to be a choice of 2 exams, and then there is a third possibility for a retake. So you register for an exam, and that will be given a time. And then what's going to happen is that for those people who've registered for the exam, I will make the exam paper available to you at the time of the exam. When it becomes available, you download the paper and you can start writing. You've got the 2 hours to write the answers, and because in the end you're going to have to then upload your answers, it's going to have to be in a form that is uploadable. So my advice to you is that you should write your answers on a word processor on a computer. That would be the easiest method and the less time consuming method for you. And given that you've only got a limited amount of time to actually send the essays back, then that's advisable. It would be possible for you to write them by hand if you've got some way of then scanning that into a document, an electronic document. But please let me ask you right from now, if you do want to write it by hand, do not then try to take a photograph of it with a mobile phone or something like that. My experience of those sorts of things is that they tend to be very unclear and not very good representations of what you've written. And if we can't read what you send us, then I'm afraid you're not going to be able to get the full marks that you might deserve for the thing. If it's totally illegible, then I'm afraid it won't pass at all. So please don't do that. As I say, the best method is to type it up on a Word document, and that way it's going to be clear what you've submit. Okay, now, during the exam, you are going to be allowed to refer to published material. So you can use books, or you can use the internet for information. But a word of warning here, even though this is a possibility, do bear in mind that any time you spend looking things up and reading about them on the internet is time that is going to be taken away from you being able to write the essay. You've only got 40 minutes per essay, which isn't a lot of time in the first place. So if you're going to spend some time of that looking things up, then you are cutting back even more on the time you've got to write. So my advice is, although it's possible to access published material for the exam, my advice is it's better to be prepared and have looked up that stuff before the exam actually starts. That way it'll be there available to you straight away and you won't have to spend time looking things up. The other thing to say about this is you are not allowed, even though you're allowed to consult published material, you are not allowed to copy and paste it, say from a web or from a published book or anything like that. We will actually be checking to see that there are no instances of direct copying from any source. And if you are found to have done so, I'm afraid you will be disqualified and you will fail the exam. So do not copy and paste stuff from the web or any other source. And finally, if you do make use of published material, you are going to have to cite your sources like you have to in any piece of writing you do at the university. Otherwise, you could be accused of plagiarism, and that will again earn you a disqualification for plagiarizing, stealing somebody else's ideas. If you cite your sources, then you're clearly not stealing, you are attributing your material to the relevant place. Now, that again is going to take time if you're going to have to type in your references at the end of the essay. So it might be worth your while preparing some references before the exam even starts and have those available so that you can copy and paste those sorts of things to the end of your essay. That would be a sensible thing to do. Finally, then, once you've written your essay or your essays, then you have to save the document and upload it to Canvas. Okay. Now, in order to give you time to do that, I will give you an extra 30 minutes onto the end of the exam. So the deadline by which you have to submit the papers then is 2 hours and 30 minutes after the paper becomes available. I would recommend against being tempted to going into that 30 minutes for writing your essays and spend 2 hours and 30 minutes instead of just the 2 hours. And the reason for that is simple. The 30 minutes for uploading your papers is there just in case you find problems. If you find problems uploading your material, then you'll have 30 minutes to contact me and say, look, I'm having difficulties getting my stuff up onto Canvas, and we'll be able to sort things out in the relevant time. If you spend 30 minutes writing instead of trying to upload and then you have problems, well, you pass time, and that's not going to help. You're going to actually fail the exam if you don't submit the answers within the relevant time. So I would very much advise you to take 2 hours to write the exam and then use the final 30 minutes in preparing the documents to be submitted. Okay, so a few words of advice about how to actually go about writing your answers in the exam. First of all, once you get the paper, spend some time reading through all of the questions so that you know that you can choose the 3 that you're best able to answer. Okay, don't just do this as a knee-jerk reaction that you find the question to the topic that you've revised and just write that. The problem with that is the question that is asked may not be the one that you can best answer. So obviously it's going to be best for you to choose the 3 questions that you can best answer, and you will only know what they are if you read all 10 of them at the beginning. So do spend some time in looking at the whole paper before you choose your chosen subjects to answer. Next, plan the answers. Okay, don't just start writing and then find you've gone off at a tangent and have to sit down and think about how to answer the question and make a short plan. Obviously nothing elaborate, you haven't got an awful lot of time to do that. The simplest plan is the best plan here. And a big point to mention here is that when you are answering your questions, answer the question. Okay, don't just see the question as being a generic question about that topic and then asking you to regurgitate everything that you've read on that topic. Okay, there may be some course notes for the particular topic, but the question isn't asking you to regurgitate those notes. The question is going to be asking a specific thing from those notes. Okay, so just because you've read something doesn't mean to say that it is relevant to answering a particular question in the exam. What the question is asking you to do is sort through the material that is available and to pick out the relevant material that you need to write. And it's part of the assessment of how well you write the answer as to how well you've done that, how much you're able to recognize what is relevant from the material in order to answer the question. So consider what the question is asking you before you actually write the answers. Okay, and the best way to proceed to actually write the exam paper is, once you've figured out what are the relevant material and you've planned to write it, plan it in such a way that the most relevant material goes in first. And that's for a simple practical reason, and that is that it's that stuff that you're going to get marks for. And if you are running out of time, obviously the more important stuff you put into the exam, the more marks you're going to get. The last few points may not pick you up very many marks, and if you're running out of time, they're the things that you need to let go. Okay, so put the most relevant material into the essay first, and that way you're going to maximize your chance of getting a good mark. Finally, I very much advise you to attempt an answer to all three questions. Don't feel tempted to write just two answers. And the reason for that we'll see in discussing the marking. So how are these things going to be marked? Well, in order to pass the exam, you have to pass two questions at least. Okay, so you are allowed to fail one of the essays and still pass the exam. If you don't pass two, that is, if you fail more than the two or more questions, then you get a fail for the whole exam, no matter how well you did on the third one. Okay, a pass is a mark of 2 or above, so you have to get at least 2 2s. Now, if you don't write an answer for one of the sections, then you get a 0 for that section. Okay, and the final mark that you get for the whole exam is calculated on an average of the marks that you got for each section. Now, this is why it's important to try to answer all three questions. As I said, if you don't write an answer at all, you get a 0. If you write an answer that isn't a good answer, you'll get a 1. Now, that can make a difference as to whether or not you pass the exam. Let's have a look at some examples then to show you how this might work. So if you write if you only write 2 answers, one of them passes with a 2 and one of them passes with a 1, and then you get a 0 for the one that you didn't write an answer for, well, that's obviously going to be a fail because you haven't got 2 passes. You've only got 1 pass there, and a 1 and a 0 are not passes. If you write 3 answers and fail 2 of them, again, it's going to be a fail because, again, you haven't got 2 passes. If you write two essays and you get a 2 for both of those but fail to write the third one, then the result is again a fail, but this time it's because of the way we average the things out. If you've written 2 2s and you've got a 0 for not writing the third one, then that is going to give you a total of 4. 2 2s are 4, and that's divided by the 3 answers that you should have written, and that's going to give you an average of 1.3. 1.3 rounds down to 1, and therefore your grade is going to be a fail. On the other hand, suppose you write 3 answers, 2 of them get a 2 and 1 of them is a fail. Okay, so you've passed 2, so it's a possible pass. This time, 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. 5 divided by 3 is 1.6, and that gets rounded up to a 2. So you actually passed the exam by at least just attempting to write that third answer. Even if it's not a very good answer and you fail it, it still means that you can pass the exam. Whereas if you decide not to write it at all, then you could fail because of that. Okay, so that's why I very much advise you to attempt all 3 answers, even if you're not very confident with that third answer. Okay. All right, well, that's everything I've got to say about this course. I hope you get something out of it and that you enjoy the material that we've put up, and I wish you all the best of luck for the exam when it comes up. Okay, bye-bye.